Hello everyone, I'm going to tell you the story of how I uncovered a shocking, venomous truth about my boyfriend and his picture-perfect traditional family, a family that was hiding a darkness far uglier than I could have ever imagined. What began as a hopeful, all-consuming love slowly devolved into a suffocating campaign of control, insidious lies, and psychological warfare designed to break me. This, however, is not a story of a victim. It's the story of a powerful journey to reclaim my own narrative and expose their rotten foundation to the world. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily ReBLOX stories. And now, let's start. The very first thing Jonah ever said to me about his parents was that they were old-fashioned. It was a soft, gentle, almost charming word. I should have known back then that old-fashioned was just a palatable euphemism for something much colder, much harsher, and much worse. A year and a half later, I found myself in a dim, exhaust-fumed parking lot, my body frozen in place, while my boyfriend of nearly 2 years screamed at me for finally, belatedly understanding what that word truly meant. The signs, the little red flags, the moments of profound unease, they had been there all along, scattered like breadcrumbs throughout our relationship. I had just willfully, foolishly chosen to ignore them. I was blinded by the naive belief that love, my love, could fix anything, could bridge any gap, could heal any prejudice. I was wrong. Jonah began what I now call the training. About a week before I was scheduled to finally meet his family for the first time. He called it getting ready, but it felt more like being methodically sliced up, piece by piece, until I was a more acceptable version of myself. He'd say things with a casual, almost helpful tone that made them all the more insidious. Hey, maybe you should straighten your hair for the party. It's just a more classic look. Could you try to be a little quieter when you tell your work stories? You can be a bit intense sometimes. And the one that still makes my stomach clench. It's probably best not to bring up your new promotion at work. My mom gets a little uncomfortable around, strong, assertive black women. I stood in front of my mirror for hours that week, a stranger in my own reflection, trying to physically and emotionally make myself smaller, softer, less threatening. All I wanted, with an ache that was almost painful, was for his family to accept me. But the acceptance never came. I wasn't invited to Christmas or Easter. When his cousin got married in a lavish ceremony, he told me there just wasn't room for a +1. But somehow friend Tessa, a blonde, blue-eyed woman from his own social circle, was there, smiling brightly in every single photo he posted online. Each time I was excluded, he would have a detailed, elaborate, and ultimately believable excuse. There were guest list issues, complex family drama I wouldn't understand, just terrible, unfortunate timing. And I, desperate to believe in the future he was promising me, believed it all. I stayed home scrolling pictures of Tessa posing arm in arm with his relatives, a ghost in my own relationship. I even told my own family a web of lies, making excuses for why I, after more than a year, still hadn't met his parents. 6 months ago, my own mother, a woman who sees through everything, looked me straight in the face and said with a quiet, firm certainty, "That boy is hiding you, baby." I defended him passionately and foolishly. He always looked so genuinely heartbroken when we talked about his parents' reluctance. He'd hold my hands, his eyes full of a sorrow I now know was completely fabricated, and promise me that he was trying every single day to change their minds. His sister's engagement party was supposed to be the moment, the grand unveiling, the moment I was finally deemed acceptable and welcomed into the fold. I had worked so hard for 18 long months to be seen as good enough for them. For 2 weeks leading up to the event, Jonah coached me relentlessly, critiquing my outfits, correcting my speech, and giving me a list of safe topics to discuss, until I felt less like a girlfriend and more like an undercover agent about to infiltrate a hostile foreign government. When I finally stepped into his sprawling, immaculate childhood home, his mother greeted me with a smile that was a perfect, beautiful lie. It didn't reach her cold, appraising eyes for a second. His father didn't even acknowledge my existence, walking right past me as if I were invisible. The entire night was a nightmare of subtle exclusion. Every time I walked into a room, conversations would abruptly stop. People would offer me tight, polite smiles before turning their backs. The whole evening felt like a fake, staged show, a performance in which they were all being forced against their will to tolerate my presence. At one point, overwhelmed by the oppressive weight of it all, I slipped in their oversized pantry, a room bigger than my first apartment, just to cry in peace amongst the neatly organized jars of imported olives and artisanal crackers. Not long after that humiliating party, I overheard Jonah's mother talking in the kitchen. She was on the phone, her voice loud and clear, utterly unconcerned that I might be in the next room. "I don't know," she said with a dismissive sigh. "I just wonder how long this little phase is going to last." His phase. As if I were just some rebellious experiment, a temporary deviation from the norm. Not a real person, not the woman her son claimed to love. The part that truly crushed my spirit, however, came a few weeks later. In a desperate attempt to bridge the ever-widening gap, I offered to host his family for a small, intimate dinner at my own apartment. Jonah's face went instantly pale. It was a look of pure, unadulterated panic. That wasn't the reaction of someone who was trying to build a bridge between his two worlds. It was the reaction of someone who knew, with absolute certainty, that one of those worlds was built on a foundation of lies. His family would never walk into my home. They would never sit at my table. Because to step into my world, a world where I was confident, successful, and unapologetically myself, would be to make their quiet, country club racism too real, too tangible to ignore. When I confronted him, asking why he had reacted with such horror, he immediately went on the defensive, and, making drama for no reason. He accused me of being ungrateful for all the hard work he had done to get them to accept me. But the truth, the cold, hard, was that all those efforts were lies. For 18 agonizing months, he had been pretending, stalling, and managing my expectations while his family quietly, patiently waited for him to come to his senses and push me out. Our fights became more frequent, more vicious. The final one ended with him storming out of my apartment, shouting that he had to seriously think about whether I was worth all this trouble. 3 days of deafening silence passed. Then, a single cold text came through. Meet me in the work parking lot after you clock out. We need privacy. When I saw him standing there under the dim, flickering lights of the garage, he didn't even hesitate. He walked right over and said, "My family is never going to accept you." "I'm done trying." I asked him, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak, why he had wasted 1.5 years of my life. Why he had let me believe this, shrugged, a casual, dismissive gesture that broke what was left of my heart. "Honestly," he said, "I thought you'd give up first. I figured you'd get tired of it and leave, and save me the trouble." I turned to walk away, my eyes burning with unshaded tears, but he grabbed my arm, his grip shockingly hard enough to leave a mark. His fingers tightened like a vice when I tried to pull away. He leaned in close, his voice a low, menacing whisper, and told me not to make things messy. At work or with our shared group of friends? I finally wrenched my arm free and scrambled to my car. My hands were shaking so violently that I could hardly fit the key in the ignition. As I drove away, my eyes kept darting to my rearview mirror. Something fundamental had shifted in him, from a weak, manipulative boy into something colder, more dangerous, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I truly didn't know what he was capable of. 20 minutes later, I pulled into my apartment complex, still compulsively checking my mirrors every few seconds. My hands hadn't stopped trembling. Then my stomach dropped like a stone. Jonah's car was already there, parked in one of the designated visitor spots. He must have taken a shortcut through downtown while I was aimlessly driving around, trying to catch my breath. When I got to my door on the second floor, he was already there, leaning against it with a casual, proprietary air. He was holding a bouquet of roses, a cheap, generic peace offering. He stood up straighter when he saw me, his expression flickering between that wounded, regretful look he had perfected over the years and something colder, harder. I stopped about 10 feet away from him, my keys clutched in my hand like a weapon. He stepped forward and held out the roses. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice a smooth, practiced apology. He talked about the stress he was under at work, about not meaning the things he had said. Then his voice dropped, becoming quieter, more intimate. He reminded me with a point that our conversation in the parking garage was private, something that no one else needed to hear about. Right then, a miracle happened. My neighbor Keisha's door creaked open. She leaned out, her eyes squinting down the dim hallway. "Everything okay out here?" she asked, her voice sharp with a neighborly concern that felt like a lifeline. Jonah's entire demeanor changed in an instant. That smooth, charming, good guy smile snapped into place. He introduced himself as my boyfriend and said, with a casual, dismissive shrug, "We just had a little argument. Nothing serious, we're working it out." Keisha looked from his smiling face to my pale, trembling one, her eyes narrowing, she could feel it. She knew something wasn't right. Then she did something brilliant. She mentioned that she was about to walk her daughter to daycare and asked if I wanted to come along for the walk. Jonah's smile twitched at the corners. "Oh, the one on 5th Street, right? The one with the big butterfly mural on the side?" My blood ran cold. That wasn't a casual guess, that was specific, far too specific. It meant he had been watching. He knew my neighbor's routines. Keisha's expression shifted instantly from concern to alarm. She stepped fully out into the hallway, her phone now clearly visible in her hand. Jonah, sensing the shift in power, took a small step back. His polite mask still firmly in place, he gestured towards my door and said, "Maybe we should talk inside." As soon as I was safely inside my apartment, my phone started buzzing. It was Marcus, our mutual friend. I picked up, my eyes fixed on Jonah, who was now standing by my window, still gripping the roses like they were props in a play. Marcus's voice was tight with a confusion that was quickly turning to anger. He told me that Jonah had just texted their entire group chat, saying that I had had some kind of mental breakdown at work and that he was deeply worried about me. The whole group had seen it. I stared at Jonah's back, a horrifying realization dawning on me. He had sent that message while he was driving to my apartment. He was already setting the narrative, painting me as the unstable one before I even had a chance to speak. Marcus asked what was really going on. I opened my mouth to tell him the truth, but Jonah turned around from the window and slowly, deliberately, shook his head at me, a silent, unmistakable threat. The second I hung up, Jonah launched into a long, winding, and utterly infuriating speech. He was worried about my mental health. I was being paranoid. I was interpreting his family's harmless fashion ways. He gently placed the roses on my coffee table, a calculated gesture designed to prove how calm and thoughtful he was. Through the window, I noticed something that sent another jolt of fear through me. His car was still running. I picked up my phone again and started scrolling through the photos I had taken in a daze after he had grabbed me in the garage. The bruises on my arm were already turning a deep, ugly shade of purple. I snapped a photo and posted it to my private Instagram story with a single, cryptic caption. Sometimes words aren't the only things that leave a mark. Then, a text from an unknown number. Take it down, now. I looked out the window. Jonah was still sitting in his idling car, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone. I checked the timestamp on the text. It lined up exactly with the moment I saw him typing. My phone, drained from the day's chaos, suddenly died. The charger was in my bedroom. And my spare charger. Jonah had borrowed it last week and never returned it. When I finally got my phone powered back on, a flood of notifications poured in. Jonah had posted again in our friend group chat, doubling down on his lies, talking about how worried he was for my deteriorating mental state and asking everyone to give me grace during what he was now calling an episode. He even threatened to contact my family. It was. Then, a private message from my work friend Diane. She said Jonah had shown up at the office right after I had left, cornering her near the break room and loudly asking her questions about my instability. His voice just loud enough for others to overhear. The way he described my breakdown, she said, seemed too rehearsed, too smug. He looked almost pleased with the story he was so carefully building. That's when I remembered my old emergency phone tucked away in the back of my closet. I powered it up. It still had all the photos from his sister's engagement party. Looking at them now with the veil of denial finally lifted, the truth was horrifyingly clear. His mother's expression, in the moments when she thought no one was looking at her, was one of pure, unadulterated disgust. And there, in the background of one photo, was Tessa, his ex, watching me with an expression that looked a lot like pity. A knock on my door made me jump. It was Marcus. He spoke loudly through the door. Hey, it's me! Jonah said he'd give me his Bears season tickets if I came over to check on your mental health. He had said it on purpose, loud enough for Jonah to hear if he was still lurking nearby. I opened the door, and Marcus stepped inside, pulling me into a quiet, comforting hug. I know something is wrong, he whispered. And I don't believe a word he's saying. While he was making coffee in my kitchen, my mom called. He had told her that I was making wild, paranoid accusations about his family and that he was worried for my well-being. She sounded confused, concerned, and worst of all, doubtful. I could hear it in her voice, that creeping, insidious thought, maybe this is just stress, maybe she is overreacting. Then an email from HR landed in my inbox. They wanted to schedule a mandatory meeting first thing tomorrow morning. Jonah had officially filed a formal report, stating that he was concerned that my deteriorating mental state was affecting my job performance. My phone rang again. It was the security guard from my building. He told me that Jonah's mother had shown up earlier that evening, claiming she needed to collect some of her son's belongings and that she had a key. The guard hadn't let her in, but he said that she seemed unnervingly familiar with the building's layout. The pattern was obvious now. He was trying to make me look unstable to our friends, threaten my career through HR, and let his family's quiet, insidious influence work behind the scenes. It was the same playbook he had used on his ex from college, the one who had once drunkenly hinted to me at a party that he had made her look crazy when she had tried to leave him. My neighbor, Keisha, came over later that afternoon. It turned out she had dated Jonah's cousin years ago and knew exactly what I was dealing with. She told me about the token black friend Jonah's family always trotted out at their charity events, someone they could point to as proof that they weren't prejudiced but who was never ever invited to private family dinners. This person was accepted but never equal, a prop. The next day, my friends started to fight back. When Jonah texted Marcus again about the Bears tickets, Marcus responded publicly in the group chat. I'd rather stand by a friend who is being harassed than take bribes from a liar. The chat erupted. People started demanding to know what was going on. Jonah quickly backpedaled, but the damage was done. The lies were beginning to unravel then. A message from Tessa, his ex. I'm so sorry I didn't warn you. His family made me sign an NDA and go to therapy after it ended. The pieces were all starting to fit together. I started quietly, strategically sharing the truth with key people, backing up every claim with receipts, screenshots, and dates. And every time I did, they would have their own story, another small red flag they had seen but brushed off at the time. Then, Diane, my work ally, came through with the final damning piece of evidence. She had managed to get the security footage from the engagement party. The video showed, clear as day, Jonah's mother accidentally spilling red wine on my dress. It wasn't a spill. It wasn't an accident. It was a pour. The smug, sated smirk on her face as she did it made her intentions crystal clear. And this time it was all on camera, undeniable, with dozens of witness statements. A timeline of abuse spanning multiple women in multiple years and irrefutable video evidence. The story was no longer just my word against his. The Whisper Network, the quiet, informal system of women protecting women, became louder than any public takedown ever could be. His new girlfriend never showed up to his parents' anniversary party. Her best friend had shared the photos of the bruises. The cycle was breaking, and faster this time. His carefully constructed image began to splinter and then collapse. HR launched a full investigation, not into me, but into him. They uncovered a history, misused company funds, and buried complaints from other female employees. He resigned before he could be fired. His parents, facing social and professional consequences for their own recorded, racist tirades, withdrew from the charity boards they had once dominated. Cornered and losing control, Jonah lashed out one last time. Security cameras around my building were spray painted black. Rose petals were scattered across the hood of my car. It was a threat, wrapped in the language of his old, fake romance. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had a community of women who had my back, who had lived their own versions of my story. We had built something bigger than just protection. We had built proof. We had built a truth so loud and so undeniable that even a system designed to protect men like him could no longer ignore it. His power was gone. And in its place, for me and for all the women he had tried to silence, was a quiet, unshakable, and beautiful peace.